The 41st summit of the British-Irish Council took place here just over a week ago, with senior politicians focusing on unlocking the economic and social opportunities of renewables across these islands. We'll hear from the Chief Minister and Paul Crane shortly, but first, some advice on wind farm development from the Cabinet Secretary for Economy, Energy and Welsh Language, Jeremy Miles, followed by Irish Taoiseach Simon Harris TD, Secretary of State for Northern Ireland Chris Heaton-Harris and Scottish Government First Minister John Swinney, MSP.
Wales has hosted some of the earliest offshore wind developments in the UK. Some of them have been there for so long they're coming up for decommissioning. We actually want to build on that and expand that because we think it's a very important contributor to meeting our climate goals. But it's really important, as a number of colleagues have said already today, that we are able to explain and persuade people of the value which developments of this sort have, not just for the population generally, but for communities which are sometimes nearest them. And the task, I think, is to make sure that the economic benefits are felt in those communities as well, which is why that focus on connecting what are, in some ways, global opportunities on the one hand to the lives and the prospects of communities and individuals who are near to the developments is so important. There are lots of ways of doing that. We have set up a public renewable energy developer in Wales, which will work with the Welsh Government's public estate and be able to reinvest that income in local communities so that they feel a direct connection. But there are other ways as well to make sure local people have the right skills so they can participate in the job opportunities, that businesses have the ability to support those developments through the supply chain. And that's a focus, I think, for governments everywhere, recognising the challenge that you're describing.
I'm always conscious of commenting things to do with other people's jurisdictions, but more broadly, I think there's always a importance in terms of engagement by anybody who wishes to carry out development in anybody's community. And from my own experience in an Irish perspective, where that engagement takes place in a real and meaningful way, the outcome tends to be better for the community and indeed better for those hoping the development will take place. Certainly in Ireland, and I presume it's the same in other jurisdictions, that idea of a community dividend and indeed resources, financial resources that are provided by the company carrying out a development that is then ring-fenced to spend in the community can often help as well. But it is, as you say, a balance, and it is about, I think, real and meaningful engagement.
I completely understand the premise behind the question, and indeed in the meeting highlighted what the Taoiseach has just said. In my former constituency, I'm standing down, in my former constituency there are two massive solar farm plans that have just reached or gone through the whole process. One with a developer not too engaged with the local community, not explaining the benefits, which didn't go through. One with a developer that was very proactive with the community that this development was going to affect, which went through with letters of support from the local community. So I think it's incumbent on governments to explain. I think it's incumbent on the developers to explain and work with local communities and giving community benefit where possible.
There's a huge necessity in all of this to have a proper discussion about the challenge that we all face, and for that understanding about the climate emergency to be deeply understood by members of the public. I think that's a crucial starting point. But I think a lot of what Chris and the Taoiseach have said is at the heart of this discussion. What is the engagement like with members of the public? If people feel things are being done to them, it's not going to be a great start to the process. So therefore, understanding community concerns, addressing them, engaging directly is absolutely fundamental. I think there also has to be a point, and I'm a very, very strong supporter of renewable energy. I pass no comment about the proposal in Isle of Man. It's not appropriate for me to comment about this. But there are circumstances where developments have to be turned down because they are unsuitable because of the natural environment. But there has to be a clear policy framework that enables that to be broadly understood by everybody, so that everybody knows what the approach is going to be and what the considerations are going to be, so that people can have confidence in the decisions that are then taken by the political process.
Some interesting advice there from our neighbours. I asked the Taoiseach and the Northern Ireland Secretary whether the British-Irish Council is still fit for purpose.
Yeah, look, can I say I absolutely think it's fit for purpose. I think there's a huge value that I attach to it, that the Irish government attaches to it, and I think that we all do, because I think it does two things. Firstly, it ensures that in a very structured basis and on a regular basis we come together. It allows us to pick a theme or pick a topic and really delve into it, and then ask our teams to continue to work beyond it. So the fact that, yes, a structure that is now celebrating its 25th anniversary is able to come together today and deal with one of the biggest modern challenges of our time in terms of climate action, I think shows that the structure is still agile enough to respond to the issues of the day. But I absolutely, beyond all of the incredible work that goes on, and I thank all those who do that, I still think the biggest benefit of it is actually the fact that it happens and that all of us turn up and that we engage and that it provides that opportunity to catch up, to talk, to exchange and to brainstorm.
We all got to know each other a bit better. And it's through gatherings like this where, you know, when problems come in a relationship, you have a personal relationship with someone who you can talk to. So I don't think you could, you'd be in danger of undervaluing this just by judging it from the communique that came out at the end of the day. We talk about really important issues. I've learned so much in my time here. We've all got quite different politics and quite different remits, but we come together and learn from each other, and those interpersonal relationships are unbelievably valuable, especially at times of crisis.
So how did Chief Minister Alf Cannon think the 41st British-Irish Council Summit went?
The main signatory signing partners were obviously the UK and Ireland, but you know, we are an equal partner in the British-Irish Council and 1/8 equal partner in the British-Irish Council. It is designed to foster friendship, break down barriers, seek progress in terms of the social and economic challenges that are facing us all, and you know, enable us to learn from each other and explore new areas of policy perhaps that others are yet to touch. So you know, there's a lot of value from it, and of course right at the heart of it, and I know that was mentioned in the press conference today, was that ability just to build connections and friendships with fellow politicians and break down those political barriers. And you know, it's not all plain sailing, and not so much for the Isle of Man, but you know, for other devolved nations, you know, there's quite a lot of political tension, so it does help break down some of those barriers and give a platform for better talks and stronger relationships moving forward. And I certainly know this fourth or fifth Irish Council that I've attended now, and I know that at times productive talks have taken place behind the scenes, and where there were clear tensions, public tensions going into the British Irish Council, coming out the other side, it appears that some of those, looking on as an observer, it appears that some of those have been resolved. So it has got a relevant purpose. It still has a relevant purpose, and it was a privilege to chair it.
And of course, one of the things that we heard from some of the delegates was how important that behind the scenes communication is in terms of getting to understand other people and other people's perspectives. The conference itself was specifically, though, about renewable energy, and how does the British Irish Council actually influence the likes of Isle of Man government's policy making, if it does at all?
Well, as I said, it's about understanding how others are tackling some of those challenges, and you know, not everything is plain sailing when you are setting this infrastructure up. There's a lot of regulation that needs to be sorted out. You know, issues around grid connectivity, grid strengthening, and you know, price points and route to markets. And certainly for us, you know, the Morvannon wind farm that we're setting up, there are some issues around that we need to make sure that we've got clear moving forward, particularly discussions with the UK, because that's going to be the primary market for the wind farm as it is currently planned. So, you know, it does help. It allows us to build those contacts, and actually, you know, we've taken away some good contacts in the devolved administrations where we can reach out and now work with them on specific points that have been raised in either one-to-one discussions or have been raised in the full plenary session. So yeah, there are good takeaways for the Isle of Man. It does help us, and not so much this time because there's a UK general election, but it's also, as I said to you, these one-to-one discussions is an opportunity to raise any issues of the day that are of particular concern. Of course, the UK general election has somewhat diluted the attendance today in terms of, over the last 2 days. John Swinney only got here at sort of 9:30 this morning, and the Taoiseach only got here at 10 o'clock this morning. Nevertheless, the last few hours have been hugely productive, and as I said, it's a tremendous privilege for the island to chair it.
One of the delegates mentioned that one of the first things you have to do if you're going to miss a target is to actually have the target in the first place. What we know is that the various countries represented at this conference are all struggling to meet their targets. How close do you think the Isle of Man is to actually delivering and meeting its targets?
I think the critical thing is, such as the pace of delivery that is happening around us, though, that we do set the right targets, and we have to set ambitious targets. Whether that is for the private sector delivery or whether that is for public sector delivery, it's right that we set down those targets, both in terms of supply demand, but also in terms of the actual timescales that we're attaching to it. I don't think there's any secret this is tight now. I mean, we talked about 2030 as our target date for electricity supply for net zero electricity, and at the moment, we are still in the planning processes with our offshore wind, and we've got a long way to go in terms of getting all the regulation in place. And of course, as you know, onshore, that's having to go through its statutory planning processes, and that's not always that easy to negotiate. So, look, we are making progress. We're making strong progress. I would argue in the last 3 years or 2.5 years, we've made more progress than we've seen in the last 15 or so years, and that's not necessarily a criticism, but we have been clear about targets, and once you set those targets, you do put in place a chain of events whereby things will start to happen. It's just a case of then trying to keep everything on track when it comes to delivery. But we're there or thereabouts, but we know that there's still many questions that keep cropping up, both with the current projects, but also with ambitions that private sector might have for new technologies, and understanding how we're going to feed those onto the grid. And I talked about, certainly the plenary talked about, grid strength and grid connectivity, and that's one of the challenges we also have here in the Isle of Man as well. So there's a long way to go, but having those targets, driving forward. And if we don't do it, we will get left behind. And frankly, we've got to recognise that energy security, cost of energy, making use of our natural resources now, it's absolutely critical that we make proper progress, and we make that progress in this, both in this government and in the next government, so that by the time we get to 2030, if we don't hit that target, then we are substantially on the way to achieving it.
You mentioned in one of your answers during the press conference that you're expecting a decision one way or the other from Ørsted in, was it 2029 for the Moa Vannon offshore wind farm? So
that's a final investment decision. At the moment it is go. Ørsted have been good partners for the government. I was pleased to meet them down in London as well. We had lengthy discussions about the progress that was being made, the investment that they are making, the discussions that they are having about the routes to market, and of course our commitments to work to get the legislation in place as well. And that's happening at pace. There's a lot of investment going in behind the scenes, and many millions of pounds will be invested before we even actually get to see a turbine in the sea, through all the planning processes, the environmental surveys, the planning permissions, the legislation, discussions with the UK. So, look, we're well underway, and I'm confident that we're going to deliver that planned project, and as I say, it'll be fantastic for the island to see that up and running.
Grid Paul
connectivity.
Crane had a few thoughts about an opportunity for the Chief Minister to raise the matter of a fairer deal in relation to energy developments that are closer to us than the UK. He spoke to me prior to the British-Irish Council Summit.
Yeah, I think the topic that I'd like to focus on is what's happening in relation to just fair, reasonable access to maritime holdings in the Irish Sea that are nearer to the Isle of Man than any other jurisdiction, which you may recall back in December was a motion in Tynwald. Tynwald agreed a policy that we should have access to some of the benefits of those holdings, and requested the Council of Ministers to begin negotiation and discussions with the Ministry of Justice and with the Crown Estates Commission. That was clearly a major sort of decision at that point. We then had heard very, very little as to what progress was being made with this. So I submitted a written question in May asking where we were up to and asking could we see the correspondence, 2 directions and so on. I got a reply very quickly from the Chief Minister. It was a very full reply, and it gave us a copy of the letter that had been sent to the Ministry of Justice back in February, I think. And I met with you may recall there were 2 petitioners with this. They were putting forward a petition, really following through on the local historian, the late Nigel Crowe. So Keith Cruish and Phil Crane, I met with them and we talked through the letter, and we felt hugely encouraged by it because the Chief Minister's letter was very full, covered all the issues that they would want to see in there, and sent, as I say, to Ministry of Justice, to a specific MP within that department. In the reply, one of the issues raised, as well as getting this letter, we got a comment from the Chief Minister saying there had been no formal response yet at the Ministry of Justice. Said they'd put this, the Isle of Man's policy request, Tynwald's policy request, they'd put that across the relevant government departments, and they would give a reply as soon as they were able, but there hadn't yet been a reply. So we had no indication of whether the Ministry of Justice or Crown Estates, indeed, Ministry of Justice said that they had sent the Isle of Man's request to the Crown Estates, but no reply of any description. So the next thing we saw that just at the weekend, saw that the British Irish Council coming here, the focus for that meeting is on renewable energy, indeed specifically on how the constituent parts of the British Irish Council can be involved in the development of renewables, which my response to that was immediately thinking, well, this is a real opportunity to talk about the Isle of Man's position. My understanding at the moment is that that focus was determined by the Chief Minister and the Council of Ministers. So it is our focus that's there for the British Irish Council meeting. But given the proximity of the election in the United Kingdom, it is unlikely that there'll be an opportunity to get down to the specifics of the Isle of Man's request, which clearly doesn't directly affect most of the Scotland and Wales and so on. They're outside that. But
actually, with the expected outcome of the next election being a landslide victory for Labour in the UK election there, us having some kind of counter demands in to hopefully put against the inevitable or the possible at least changes that the Labour Party may wish to introduce in relation to offshore tax areas like the Isle of Man. This could actually be a useful card for the Isle of Man government to play.
It might indeed, that okay, this request is on the table, if you like, wherever it's up to. The worry would be that if you do get a new government in place and completely new political personnel in Ministry of Justice, it's not going to be their highest priority. And the worry would be it'll be quite a while before they get down to that. So, it might be appropriate at some point to remind them that this is on the table. What there hasn't been, and I think it's interesting in the current position, there hasn't been a direct letter written to the Crown Estates in terms of the Crown Estates Commissioners, in terms of their side of this. And what is progressing in that direction, we've seen in this last week advert in one of the local newspapers about the progress being made with with one of the wind farms off the Isle of Man. I'm trying to think of the name for it now.
It's an age thing, I suspect. But yeah, I mean, obviously we've got the Orsted one that will eventually happen in our territorial sea. But this is outside of our territorial waters, is it? It is
outside. It comes right up to the very edge of that. Morgan is the name. Yeah, the Morgan wind farm. The adverts in the local papers last week were referring you to a website. They're going through their planning permission process. It's not called that. It's given a different title, but they're going through that process. And if you go onto the website that they give you the details of, you will see the footprint of this, which comes right up to our territorial sea. Where our territorial sea sort of curves around the Isle of Man. This follows the curve, so it's right up to the very edge of that. It's a very, very large wind farm, probably bigger or as big as the Orsted wind farm planned for our territorial waters. Very large turbines, so it's a 1,500 megawatt. With under 100 turbines, so they're 15 megawatts each. These are very big turbines. And that's being placed. And it remains that the Morgan Wind Farm will be almost entirely nearer to the Isle of Man than it is to Wales or to England. So, this is the one that's of most interest to us. Why is that not part of our territory? What a reasonable question to be asked.
And of course the answer to that is because we haven't negotiated that as yet.
Well, I can understand our territorial waters are limited. We can't increase those. But this wind farm, we don't have access to the benefits of it because of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea back in 1991. Which was an attempt to remove disagreements over sea ownership and access and so on, but actually gave all the rights to sovereign countries, And of course, we were not at the table negotiating that, so we were deemed not a sovereign country, therefore we're outside this. But the sovereign country involved, the United Kingdom, have given exclusion extension zones to Scotland and to Bermuda, to the Falkland Islands and so on. They've given those things, and therefore it raises the question: could the Isle of Man have had this sort of access?
In conclusion, then, are you optimistic that we're going to get, as a result, possibly even of the British Irish Council, some good news?
I don't anticipate that we get good news directly out of this. I think the chief will find it very hard to raise that, even if he felt so inclined within the full group meetings. The opportunity might be in some one-to-one meetings of that. I've encouraged the chief, after meeting with the petitioners, to communicate directly with the Crown Estates Commissioners, because they may well have a different take on this, this aspect of having fair, just, reasonable access to these maritime reserves.
Because from their perspective, if they're handing money over, they're handing the money over regardless of who it is.
There might be a possibility there that we'd have to set up a Crown Estates Isle of Man, because the rights to to these maritime assets, the rights to the ground that the Morgan Wind Farm is on, belong to Crown Estates, but they have to hand over that money to the UK government, and in return they're currently getting 13%, which used to be called the civil list, but is now referred to as the sovereign grant. So they just get 13% of the value of it. But the value of this site, the Morgan Wind Farm, BP and a German company and a consortium together, they're currently paying 231 million a year plus VAT. So this is, a very substantial sum of money there for this access to the seabed that's nearer to us than any other part of the UK.
And just 1% of that would be quite handy.
Yeah, I'd settle for that, I think. But it would be useful. But clearly there's a bigger question there about how crown dependencies, not sovereign countries, are treated by the sovereign country to which we are linked. And that's it's a big question.
That was Paul Crane, MLC. So what do you think? Is the BIC still a valuable institution? Does it give us a better opportunity than most to talk to the big political hitters from our neighbouring countries? Did the ministers give good advice on how to proceed with wind farm developments? And do you agree with Paul Crane that we should have a fair share of the hundreds of millions of pounds the Crown Estate currently gives primarily to the UK government? Any chance of that happening, do you think? Let me know your thoughts by contacting Phil Gaughan at manxradio.com and get in touch if you have any ideas for future shows. Don't forget this programme is available as a podcast on Manx Radio's website. For now though, I'm Phil Gaughan. Goram Mayu. Thanks for listening.